This is at the top of the 3.2 notes. Before we even begin, we're actually going to highlight some of the directions. This is what the directions look like on your quiz on Friday. Think of each segment in the diagram as part of a line. That's the first thing I want you to highlight. As part of a line. So remember that when we name a line, we have a line with arrows and we name 2 points. This second thing I want to point out, it says which lines or planes contain point B. Let's go ahead and highlight contain point B. And appear to fit the description. It wants you to list all of the lines that fit the description, but only containing point B, or we'd be listing for a while. So we want skew to FG through point B. Are skew lines on the same plane? They are not. So we don't want anything from the top of the box because FG is a part of the top. And we don't want anything from the back of the box because FG is part of the back. So what line through point B is skew? BC is correct. So BC. Now we want a line that is perpendicular to FG. So are perpendicular lines on the same plane? Yes, and then do they intersect?
Yes.
Yes, they have to. So BG is our answer. All right, parallel to FG through point B. So parallel, do they have to be on the same plane? Yes. And then should they intersect? No. So what is parallel to FG through point B? AB. Last, we want to name the plane that is parallel to plane FGH. What part of the box is FGH a part of? The back, right? So we want to name the front. But the thing is, when we name a plane, number one, what do we write first? Plane. And then we want our answer to contain point B. So what do we want to name it? ABC, BCD is fine. DAB, anything like that. The second section, we're going to name a pair of parallel lines. What do we want to look for to find parallel lines? The little caret marks, little triangles. So we should see a couple. We see these as well as these two. So keep in mind two triangles, these are parallel to each other. One triangle, they're parallel to each other. We're just going to pick a pair to name. Which ones do we want to name parallel? UV. UV is parallel. So use your parallel symbol. Looks like two straight lines. UV is parallel to QR. We want to name perpendicular lines, so what do we look for? A right angle. The right angle is touching two lines, so we need to name those two lines. What is one of them? I just didn't hear you. Did you say NT? And U, that's correct. So he used the letter N, which is correct. N is at this intersection. Remember, it is a point. So we can say NU. You could say VU also if you wanted, whichever one. And then is perpendicular. It's an upside down T. And then what line is it perpendicular to?
ST.
ST. All right, then it says, is WX parallel to QR? So are they parallel?
No.
Definitely not. And then what is the number one reason why they're not?
They intersect.
They definitely intersect. They intersect. I think the reason they ask is because they want to point out that one of them has one triangle and the other one has two triangles. So they're not parallel. All right, and then last, it says ST is ST perpendicular with NV?
Yeah.
Do they intersect and form 90?
Yeah.
They do. They do. So there's a right angle on this side. So number one, there would be a right angle on this side as well. But also, I know it's hard to see, but they did name it like a line. There are little teeny tiny arrows. So this line would keep going and extend this way. So they are perpendicular. Yes, and the reason is they form 90 degrees. Yeah, you could use the definition. They intersect, form 90. They form 90 degrees, however you want to do it. All right, and then we talk about these two words. I think one of them you'll have to write down. Parallel lines, we said, they're coplanar and they don't intersect. But what about transversals? What is a transversal?
A line that intersects two other lines.
Yeah, it is a line that intersects two or more lines. It is a line that intersects two or more lines. A line that intersects two or more lines. So in that case, what is the transversal in our bottom picture?
Line T.
Line T. Yeah, that is the line that touches two or more lines. So we're going to go through and name all of the corresponding angles first. So let's start with angle 1. Angle 1 is in the top left. So where does it correspond with? Angle 5. So you're going to go ahead and list it. Angle 1 and angle 5. All right, then angle 2 is in the top right. It corresponds with angle 6. Angle 3 is in the bottom left, so it corresponds with angle 7. And then angle 4 is in the bottom right, so it corresponds with angle 8. Corresponding. Letter B is alternate exterior. So when you're looking at exterior or interior, you're looking either between or outside of the double lines. So for exterior, we're looking at the outside. So name an angle on the outside of the double lines. Angle 2 is alternate exterior with angle 7. And then the other one would be?
Angle 1 and angle 8.
Angle 1 and angle 8. Correct. All right, alternate interior. So again, inside the double lines, they need to be across from each other on the transversal. So what is one set of alternate interior?
3 and 6.
3 and 6. And then your second set,
4 and 5.
yeah, 4 and 5. 3 and 6, 4 and 5. And then last, you have consecutive interior, so still on the inside of the double lines, but they should be on the same side of the transversal. So that would be angle 3 and angle 5, and then angle 4 and 6. Wonderful. So go ahead and turn to the next page. This is where your highlighters are going to come in. So we're not going to go through and re-highlight everything like we did yesterday, or the day before, I think. We're just going to review some things. So starting with vertical, I believe it is the top left, yeah? All right, top left. So what do we know about vertical angles? What do we know about their measures?
They're congruent.
They're congruent. So go ahead and write in the word congruent. And then I would pick a color and highlight the word congruent with vertical angles. Some of the angle relationships we talk about today will be congruent, such as vertical angles. And then some of them will be supplementary, which we'll get to when we get to it. And then we can just highlight one example of vertical angles. There are 4 sets, but we can just highlight one of them. So what is an example of vertical angles? Yeah, 1 and angle 4. 1 and 4, 2 and 3, 5 and 8, 6 and 7. Any of those. All right, and then we have a linear pair as well. So to the right, I believe that's a linear pair. What do we know about the measures of linear pairs? There's supplementary, right? So go ahead and write supplementary. And then I would highlight it in a separate color. Essentially for Friday, you need to make sure you know which of these will be congruent and which ones will be supplementary. So if you're visual like me, usually highlighting them different colors is helpful. So that we said there are 8 of these yesterday. We can highlight one of them. What is an example of a linear pair in this picture? 7 and 8. You could do 1 and 2 if you wanted. There are many, many examples you could pick. But just 2 angles that are next to each other will be a linear pair. So these are true no matter what kind of lines you have. These are true if your lines are not parallel. These are just true in general. The rest of them depend on having parallel lines. So I will start by showing you that. So find the corresponding angles box. And here's what we're going to learn about them. If 2 parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the corresponding angles will be congruent. But it has to be with parallel lines. We are on the same side. We have not moved. So with corresponding angles, you find that box. The first thing I want you to do is go ahead and fill in that you need parallel lines. So go ahead and draw the little triangles. So find the corresponding angle box and draw the little triangles. This property is only true if the lines are parallel. I'll show you a picture of why that is the case. And then you can go ahead and write in the word congruent. And you can highlight it in the same color you wrote congruent earlier. So if parallel lines are cut by a transversal, your corresponding angles are congruent. And then what is an example in your picture? It's different than mine. What is an example in your picture of corresponding angles? 2 and 6. Sounds good. So you can highlight 2 and 6. 2 and 6, 1 and 5, 3 and, I think it's a 7. Yeah. All right. So all this depends on what kind of lines. Parallel. So I'll show you an example of not parallel lines. So number 1, how do I know M and N are not parallel? There's no carets, and also they will intersect, okay? So if you looked, we can even look at, we'll just look at 1 and 5 because it's the most obvious. So angle 1 is this angle. Angle 5 is this angle. Sorry, I missed my outlining a little bit. They're not the same measure. If I pulled up a protractor, they would not be the same. And it's because these lines are not parallel. So that's why the parallel lines matter. Tomorrow in 3.3, you're actually going to learn the opposite. So this says if you have parallel lines, your corresponding angles will be congruent. Tomorrow, if you have corresponding angles that are congruent, then your lines are parallel, which we'll talk about. But these are corresponding. We'll do alternate interior next. If you have parallel lines, so again, it's important to have parallel lines. Go ahead and draw in your triangles for alternate interior. So if parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the alternate interior angles will be congruent. So you can also write in the word congruent. So alternate interior will be congruent. Then I would highlight the word congruent in the color you've been using for congruent. All right, and then what's an example of alternate interior angles in your picture? 4 and 5 is a good one, and then the other one is 3 and 6. Yeah. You can just highlight one if you want, or both. It's up to you. Those are alternate interior. So if this is true for alternate interior, if you had to make an educated guess about alternate exterior, what would you guess? They will be congruent. They're on the outside, yeah. But alternate exterior, if you have 2 parallel lines, so again, go ahead and draw in your parallel, your little triangles. So if you have 2 parallel lines, cut by a transversal, your alternate exterior angles will be congruent. So you can write in the word congruent, highlight it with that same color. And then on yours, what is an example of alternate exterior? 1 and 8. Good. And then the other one would be 2 and 7. All right, and then last are about consecutive interior angles. So if parallel lines, so last time make your lines parallel. This is only true for parallel lines. If parallel lines are cut by a transversal, your consecutive interior angles are supplementary. So this one is supplementary. So write in supplementary, and then highlight it whatever color you highlighted. So, what's easier to remember is the fact that there are only 2 types of angles that are supplementary. So what are the 2 types of angles that will be supplementary? A linear pair and consecutive interior. The rest of them will be congruent to each other. Those are the only 2 relationships that are supplementary. Whenever you're ready, we're going to apply all of this knowledge on the next page. We're going to start in the middle of the page. To find the measure of the angle, we're also going to list the relationship. So what relationship does the question mark and 75 have?
It's vertical.
They are vertical. Let's go ahead and write in vertical. So we're in like the middle-ish of the page. We're going to do those first. All right, and then what do we know about vertical angles? They're congruent. So that question mark is 75 degrees. Number 2, what relationship do these 2 angles have? They're a linear pair, which does mean that they are supplementary. So how can I find the measure of the question mark? Correct. So what is 180 minus, 68? Correct. 112. Number 3, what relationship do these 2 angles have? Consecutive interior. So I would not shorten the word consecutive. You could shorten interior to int if you want. So C-O-N-S-E-C-U-T-I-V-E. Consecutive interior. So to find the question mark, consecutive interior are supplementary. So 180 minus 55 is 125. All right, and the last one like this. What relationship do these 2 angles have? They're alternate interior. So again, you can shorten interior to INT. Alternate interior. What do we know about the measures of alternate interior angles? They're congruent. So the question mark is 113. All right, so now we're going to complete this question. We are not going to explain, because it doesn't ask you to do that on a quiz or a test, but we are going to identify the angles. The measure of 3 of the numbered angles are 120. We are going to identify them. We're actually going to fill in all of them while answering the question. But what angle do we very much know will be 120 degrees? Angle 4 will be 120. So we're going to say angle 4. That's one of them. So if it asked you why'd you say angle 4?
Because they're vertical.
They're vertical, right? What is another angle we know will be 120 degrees? Angle 5, right? So angle 5. And then the reason you know angle 5 is because it's what? It's corresponding. So 5 is in the top left, angle 5, and so is that 120. They're corresponding. There's also a second option as to why you know. It's alternate interior with 4. So these would also be congruent. All right, and then one more.
Angle 8.
Angle 8 will be 120. And you can know that for a couple reasons. It is still vertical with 5, but also what relationship does the original 120 and angle 8 have?
Alternate exterior.
The alternate exterior, which are congruent. So all of those relationships should work. Corresponding should be congruent, alternate interior should be congruent, and so on. So we should be confident in filling in the rest. So how can I find the rest of the angles? Subtract from 180. So 180 minus 120 is 60. So the rest of them would be 60. So you should see a pattern if you wanted to highlight one of them so you could especially see the pattern. Essentially one of two things. You can look at, there's like a zigzag pattern. That's one way to look at it. You could look at it like you could copy, like you could cut this out and you could paste it right here and it's exactly the same. So however you want to view it. But you want to be confident in finding all of the angles. Okay? And we could do all this because they said they were parallel. All right, now we're going to find the value of x, which is at the bottom. So first of all, is there a relationship between 115 degrees and x plus 5? So corresponding would be in the same spot. So it's top left, top left. They're not corresponding. Are they both on the inside of the double lines? No. Are they both on the outside? No. Are they vertical? Are they a linear pair? So they're actually none of the above. So you see this 4. This is from your textbook, right? This is kind of giving you a hint as to how you can get some help on this. It won't be on a quiz or a test. What you can do is fill in where all the 115s are. Because either x plus 5 will equal 115 or it will equal the supplement to 115. So what you can do, 115, angle 4 will be 115 because it's vertical, right? Top left will be 115 because it's corresponding. And then vertical to that would be 115. So does x plus 5 equal 115?
No.
It does not. So one of two things can happen. You can know that this angle and this angle, what relationship do they have? They're consecutive interior, which makes them supplementary. So the long way to do it, you could take 115 plus x plus 5 equal them to 180. You could also look at it this way. They're a linear pair here too. Or, you know all of these angles are 115, right? Is there a way we could find out what all the missing angles equal? Subtract 115 from 180, that is option. So what is 180 minus 115? 65. So that means all the remaining angles are 65 degrees. So that means x plus 5 equals 65. Subtract 5 and x is 60. You do get the same answer either way. I know right now you're like, the second way was so much shorter. But a lot of people actually choose to do this method, which is fine. What is 115 plus 5? 120 plus x equals 180. Then you would subtract 120 and you still get 60. So either way you can do it. You flip to the next page. We have 2 more we're doing together. Is there a relationship between 136 and 7x plus 9? Yeah, so consecutive exterior is just not in our textbook. So, like, technically no, but, like, I guess in other textbooks you can call it consecutive exterior. But they don't equal, right?
No.
They will not. If you wanted to put the 136 in all of the places. Right, so I knew this 136 because vertical. I knew this 136 because they're corresponding. And this 136 because vertical and corresponding. So does 7x plus 9 equal 136?
No.
It does not. So again, you could do 136 and add it to 7x plus 9, and they equal 180. Or option 2, how can I find out what 7x plus 9 does equal? 180 minus 136, which is 44. Which means all those remaining angles are 44 degrees. Subtract 9. 7x equals 35. So x is 5. Okay, and again, the book tried to help you because what relationship does 1 have with this angle? Their alternate exterior. So they would be equal. So you could find angle 1 by doing the same thing we just did. We subtracted. Angle 1 would be 44 degrees, and it would end up equaling 7x plus 9, which is what we did. Questions on this one? Okay. Go ahead and put a star next to this one. This is an honors question, and it will be on your quiz and your test. And I will show you. You want to prove that if two parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the pairs of alternate interior angles are congruent. So first of all, you can go ahead and highlight. We want to prove that alternate interior angles are congruent. Let's go ahead and highlight that. That is our end goal. So at the very end, you're going to write the word prove. In this particular picture, where are the alternate interior angles? 1 and 2. So we want to prove that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. That's what we want to prove. And I will tell you how to do that. So up here I put a little star. This is how you will answer this problem. You're going to list all the angle relationships. You're going to list all of the angle relationships and their measures. Sounds like a lot, but you only have 3 angles listed here, right? Yes? So there's only 3 relationships that are in this picture. So pick a pair of angles. 1 and 3. Okay, let's talk about angle 1 and angle 3. What do we know about angle 1 and angle 3? They're corresponding. So what do we know about corresponding angles when you have parallel lines? They're congruent. So we know angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. So that is the angle relationship, that's their measure. The angle relationship is because they're corresponding. We'll say because corresponding angles are congruent. So because corresponding angles are congruent. All right, what other angle relationship is there in this picture? We have 1 and 3 and 1 and 2. Angle 2 and angle 3, what do we know about angle 2 and angle 3? They're vertical, which means they are congruent. So we know that angle 2 is congruent to angle 3. And our reason is because vertical angles are congruent. So essentially you just showed the transitive property. And I will throw a number up here so you can understand why this proves that these are congruent. So we started with 1 and 3. So give me an angle measure for angle 1. 50? So angle 1 is 50 degrees. At the beginning we said angle 1 is congruent to angle 3 because corresponding angles are congruent. So angle 3 would be 50 degrees. The next thing we said was 2 and 3 are congruent because vertical angles are congruent. So angle 2 is 50 degrees. So did we just prove that angle 1 is the same measure as angle 2?
Yes.
Yes. So that's what it'll look like. You'll be given 3 angles. I would start the problem by putting prove, figure out what you're trying to prove. We were trying to prove alternate interior angles are congruent, which were 1 and 2 in this case. And then you list the angle relationships as well as their measures. Question about this one? We do practice it again tomorrow.